Hey everyone, this is the Rewriter writing in. For today's video, I want to share with you all a story that I made for my creative writing class this last semester. This story is based off of Skippy from Cyberpunk 2077, the talking gun that V acquires by finding it out in the game world. Now, I wrote this story as sort of a reimagined prequel to V finding Skippy. Now, a disclaimer. This story is completely original, meaning that I didn't write this according to the Cyberpunk 2077 lore whatsoever, as I just took the idea of Skippy and ran with it. So if you're watching this and wondering why this is nothing like the story they gave Skippy in the actual game, this is why. Also, before we get into it, this story is part one of a larger story, one I haven't fully written yet. So if you guys enjoy this, let me know if you want me to finish the story. Now, with all this being said, let's dive into my own short story titled Cy, the Silent Bounty Hunter. Most buildings in the corporate district of Night City have the height of the old Empire State Building. Neon advertisements of drinks, food, clothing, and explicit content are flashed 24/7. There's no rest from the corporation's heavy influence on society. Flying cars zoom through the cloudy, rainy night, with beams of light projecting across the sky as they attempt to get to their destination in one piece. Between each of the hulking skyscrapers are dingy, grimy, and smelly apartment complexes that are no larger than 3 stories. In order for there to be wealth, there must be hard work shouldered on the backs of low-income, corporate slaves that live in these areas. Among these apartments, a father and a son are housed. The father is a tinkerer, a genius engineer that used to work for the famed Arasaka Corporation, developing and manufacturing the greatest technologies on the planet, before being betrayed by his best friend, who was jealous of his accomplishments and prestige. Now the father's ex-best friend is the head of research and development at Arasaka, while the father is rotting in the slums, having to pick up work from anyone after being defamed. He is in his home office now, where he's welding, as sparks fly from the desk. After welding, he switches over to his computer where he's typing seemingly endless lines of code. He's been working for hours now, as his eyes grow heavy, and his thoughts are on a million other things rather than the project he's working on. He types his last few lines of code before shutting down his computer. He hears the front door open and close, and walks out to see his son stomping into the home and slamming the door. "What's wrong, Simon? I'm sure I could help you out." The father reaches out his hand to put it on Simon's shoulder, but the 13-year-old boy knocks it away and throws his backpack on the ground, making a fist with what appeared to be blood on his knuckles. Cy uses hand signals to explain that his father can't help him because he can't understand his situation. He gets picked on every day because he can't talk back, so he decided to fight back. He angrily motions that it's not fair that he gets punished by the principal for standing up for himself. Simon sits down, putting his head in his hands. A stream of a tear falls down the side of his face. "You know, Cy, I may not be mute like you, but I got my fair share of bullying at school when I was your age." Cy signals with a "really?" before the father continues. "Of course, I was the school's nerd. I always got picked on, whether it was getting stuffed into my locker or getting my backpack stolen. But you know what helped me get through it all? Knowing that I would have a future that none of the bullies would have. A real career at a place that I would make a lot of money at. And I did get there. But unfortunate circumstances happen to the best of us, and it's how we deal with these circumstances that make us better people. I know you're going through a lot, Cy, but just know that I'll always be here for you." He puts his hand on Cy as a knock on the door prompts the father to walk up and open it. A large black man wearing a vest, jeans, and golden sunglasses stands at the door with a burly henchman standing next to him, as well as some other goons behind the two of them. "Mr. Deshawn, this is a surprise," the father says. "What can I do for you?" The father's hand starts to twitch as beads of sweat drop from the back of his neck. "Something unfortunate, aggravating, actually, happened tonight. That prototype you're working on, we're going to need it now." "But it's not ready yet. The AI is still unstable. It doesn't listen to commands very well. It would be more of a danger to you than the person you're using it against." "I was afraid you were going to say that. Oleg, take care of this situation. Not too messy, please. We don't need a lot of press." "Please, you don't have to do this. I can work faster on it. I'll stay up all night configuring it. Just don't do this." Without another word, Oleg and his thugs burst into the apartment. Sai's father grabs him and runs around the corner to his office, locking the door behind them. Sweat drips from off of both of them now as Sai's face is red and his eyes are darting everywhere. "What's happening?" Sai motions to his father. "It's not good, Sai, but I need you to listen very carefully to me. On my desk here is a gun. I need you to take it and run very far away. I'll meet up with you later, but we can't let this weapon fall into the wrong hands. It's much too dangerous. I was about to equip it with a hidden remote detonation device inside that I could use to destroy it before it hurts innocent people, but I haven't gotten enough time. So you need to take it and leave right now." The door begins pounding as the thugs are screaming for them to come out. "I'm not leaving you, Dad. I won't do it." Sai violently shakes his head to the sides as his hands begin to shake. "You need to be strong now. Do this for me, okay? I need your help. I'll meet up with you as soon as I can." Sai nods his head as he goes over to the desk and picks up the oddly shaped gun, with the name Skippy crudely written on the side, and stuffs it into his backpack that he luckily picked up during the confusion. The father motions for him to go out as soon as he counts to 3. On 3, the father flings open the door and tackles the thugs as Sai runs away. Before Sai is able to jump out of the back window, he hears a shot and turns around to see his father on the ground, bleeding out. 2 of the thugs run after Sai, and Sai pulls out the gun. "Automatic aiming enabled," the gun says before firing multiple rounds into the thugs' heads with pinpoint accuracy. Tears begin to well up in Sai's eyes and his body begins to quiver, as he has just witnessed more carnage here than he thought he would his whole life. Reality sets back in as Sai hears his father's voice in his head to keep moving. He then runs for his life out of the apartment, dashing through the foggy, rainy streets as civilians are being shoved to the sides. From this point on, Sai would be hunted and forced to live on the streets, moving from location to location so that he would not be found and killed. Sai vowed from this day forward that he would train for the next several years to hunt down the men who killed his father, while also learning how to use this gun that his father had created. For the next 15 years, Sai learned to live both on the streets as well as in the Badlands, and doing whatever it took to survive. Throughout these years, Sai joined a couple of gangs, those being the Valentinos in Night City and the Aldecados of the Badlands. Even though these gangs, for a time, became his family, Skippy was always by his side, and the two became brothers, as Skippy not only spoke what Sai was thinking, but also was the last part of his father that he had left. Each of these gangs taught him how to hold and shoot a gun properly, learning to not just use Skippy as a crutch. They also taught him how to fight with his fists and with melee weapons, teaching him how to use his body as a weapon. He was also taught how to steal anything, from cars to food to even weapons. Most of all, they taught him how to kill effectively, as well as how to hunt down and track their enemies. These years developed Sai into a capable killing machine, along with being a skilled hunter and strategist. This led him to starting his profession as a bounty hunter, as one of the most important things that Sai ever learned was that if he was going to invest his whole life into something, and he's good at it, never do it for free. Sai could now fund himself, along with being able to always keep tabs on the men who killed his father. And after years of this profession, it was all about to pay off in this one night. A slender, cutting-edge sports car zooms down the highway and pulls up in front of a populated club, complete with head-banging, heart-pounding techno and strobe lights projecting dancing bodies silhouetted against the glass windows. The neon signs from mile-high skyscrapers reflect their glow from off of the puddles forming in the rain-slicked streets. Sai steps out of the vehicle wearing a cowboy hat, brown trench coat, and armor, and while walking away puts his hand over his shoulder to click the lock for his car before putting his soaked hand back into his coat pocket. He puts one hand on each side of the Old West-inspired saloon doors and pushes them back as strobe lights immediately meet his eyes, forcing him to close them for a minute before continuing to walk in. Smoke whirls around him as he paces over to the bar. Smells of alcohol, smoke, and sweat penetrates his nostrils, forcing him to casually plug his nose for a moment so he didn't vomit. He could hardly hear himself think with how blaring the music was. "What can I get for you, sir?" the cyborg bartender asks him as the man approaches the bar. He points at a holographic image of a shot of whiskey, and the bartender gives him a head nod, bending down behind the counter. The bartender stands up straight, putting a small glass on the table and filling it halfway with the whiskey. Cy grabs the glass, slides a few eddies over the counter while nodding his head, and walks away. With his whiskey in hand, he looks to his right to see a private booth closed off by a curtain, with a guard standing next to a sign reading, "Darkovich Party, Invite Only." He takes a sip of his whiskey and promptly paces over to the booth. The guard sticks his hand out to push back the man. "Read the sign, moron," the thug shouts, but is quickly caught off guard as the man uses his free hand to grab him by the suit jacket and throw him into the curtain. This knocks the thug back enough to open up the curtain, revealing a group of gangsters sitting around a circular booth as robotic waitresses hand them their drinks. All of the thugs shoot up and point their magnums at the man who walks in, except for the one in the middle, who remains seated. Boys, take it easy," the seated gangster laughs, taking a sip of vodka before laying back comfortably in his booth. Obviously, with an entrance as grand as this man has something important to say. "Go on, friend. What can I do for you?" "Down here, actually," a robotic voice chimes in as the man flips a portion of his trench coat back to reveal an odd-looking yellow, red, and white-painted smart pistol. The man pulls the pistol out of its holster, facing the left side of it towards the group as a hologram of a bullet with eyes, a mouth, and blue arms appears out of it. "Bounty target, Oleg Darkovich. Wanted for illegal arms dealing, battery on several accounts, and murder of 2 NCPD officers. Bounty price, 100,000 eddies. Generating typical phrase. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "Who even are you people?" Oleg laughs. "You must have hit your head pretty hard, friend. You clearly don't know who you're messing with." Oleg takes a shot of vodka before leaning back in the booth. "You really thought you could walk in here and demand that I come with you? I applaud your bravado, so I'm giving you this chance to put the gun down and walk away. We'll just act like this never happened." Generating answers. HJKE-11 smart gun with built-in AI. Experimental model. Name, Skippy. Partner name, Cy. Profession, bounty hunters. Answer, Dexter Deshawn. Spoken response indicates low IQ. Generating response. You have 5 seconds to comply. Bum, bum, be dumb, bum, be dumb, bum. "What the hell are you doing?" Darkovich mutters, standing up along with his thugs as they reach slowly for their weapons. "Making the wait for you to comply more pleasurable. Chosen answer, the hard way. Yippee! Target must be taken in alive. Activating puppy-loving mode." Cy takes another sip of his whiskey before launching the glass at one of the thugs' heads as it shatters into his head and onto the ground. The thugs fire their weapons at Cy, but he rolls out of the way and uses the smart targeting on Skippy to fire multiple shots into the thug's knees. This drops them onto the table, flipping it over with the glass shattering everywhere. Cy then lunges towards the other 2 guards that are left, using one as a meat shield when the other shoots at him. He then throws his body onto the other thug, knocking him over, and then kicks him in the face to knock him out. Darkovich is all that is left, and he begins running for his life through the crowded club. The music was so loud in the club that nobody even heard the gunfire coming from the private booth, so he had to continually shove people out of the way. Just as he was about to leave the club, Cy points Skippy at Darkovich, firing 2 shots that homed in on his knees, shattering them and making him fall to the ground as blood and water begins to pool around him, leaving Darkovich soaking wet from the rain. "Thank you for making us do this the hard way. Much more enjoyable," Skippy remarks as Cy cuffs Darkovich up and throws him into the back seat of his slick sports car before driving to the NCPD precinct. "You have no idea who you're messing with. Dex has a lot more influence here than you think he does, and he's not going to take too kindly to you causing trouble in his territory." Generating response. "We have a grudge with Dexter Deshawn, and won't stop until he is, as Cy puts it, sleeping with the fishes." Darkovich rolls his eyes before they light up with a blue light, and his frown turns into a smile. The sports car charges through the streets until it reaches the mega precinct of the NCPD. Once Cy pulls Darkovich out of the vehicle, he drags him by the collar through the facility. Some officers are seen smiling, while others go pale and slowly start to move away from where they were. Once they get to the cells, Cy hurls Darkovich in like a sack of potatoes and slams the gate shut, leaving Darkovich in an isolated, dimly lit cell. Cy then walks out of the cells and is stopped by Deputy Chief Officer Jonathan Teal, along with a squad of police behind him. "We have orders to relinquish Darkovich immediately," Teal states as he reaches for his weapon. Response: "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Cy began to reach Skippy, unclipping it from his holster. "Chain of demand dictates that we release him now. If you don't come quietly and let us release him, then the boss wants your head sent to him along with Darkovich." Answer to inquiry: certain police in this precinct are bought out by Dexter Deshawn. Aggressive force is required to keep Darkovich behind bars. Alternate suggestion: we bring Darkovich somewhere else where we can draw out Deshawn. Cy nods to Skippy, and he replies, "Response: sounds like a plan." "I wouldn't do anything stupid if I were you two. You don't want the biggest fixer in Night City to be after you. Just look what happened to that fool Morgan Blackhand." Cy wastes no time and aims at a pipe just above Teal's head that he shoots at, exposing a volley of steam to rush onto them, dropping Teal to the ground. The other police officers begin to fire through the steam, but don't connect any bullets. Cy then uses this time to escape to the cell block where Darkovich is sitting back, smiling. "I told you you had no idea who you were dealing with. Dex's reach goes far beyond just his club and surrounding neighborhood. You'll never stop being hunted, and I'll be let go." Darkovich begins laughing, but is silenced when Cy grabs him by the throat. And that's part 1 of my story. Thank you all so much for watching. I had a lot of fun writing this story as well as reading it out loud for the first time. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If enough of you guys liked it, I'll even consider writing the rest of the story. The growth on this channel has been amazing lately, so thank you all so much for supporting me. And if you enjoyed the story, leave a like on the video. If you like my content and want to see more of it, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again everyone, and this is the Rewriter, writing out.